the Grey Hat Beard podcast.
Hello and welcome to show 45 of Grey Hat Beard, the modern workplace podcast where we talk about all things Microsoft 365. I'm the Grey of Grey Hat Beards. My name's Kevin McDonald. I'm the practice lead for modern workplace at CPS, also Office Apps and Services MVP.
I'm the Hat of Grey Hat Beard. My name is Al Eardley and I'm a technical architect at the Microsoft Technology Centre.
And my name is Garry. I am the Beard of Grey Hat Beard. I am a modern work consultant at Microsoft and a member of the PNP team.
Fantastic. And you have a very cool t-shirt on, the Don't Accept the Defaults.
I do.
Paper Wang. I did think about changing mine, but it's far too cold in here, so I have my jumper on instead to keep me warm. But fantastic. And supporting Girls Who Code. Yeah.
Yeah, all for a good cause.
That is true. All for a good cause and a good memory all round. So that's there. Thank you to everyone who persevered with our last show at the South Coast Summit on there. Unfortunately, we did try and have Garry on and that failed miserably because no one could hear what he was saying on there. For those who did try and listen. And, yes. I thank you for those who did persevere. I know some of it was a little hard to hear. I did listen to the way back. If you did persevere, I thought it was a fantastic chat, especially if you hung around for the chat with Mark right at the end there. Really enjoyed the South Coast Summit. Great to see people back in place and great to have a real life conference on there. And talking of real life conferences, we're going to roll up our show. I haven't talked with others about this, but I think we're just going to do this. We might even split it into two parts, depending on how long we ramble within here. But we're going to do an Ignite roundup. So Ignite, the November Ignite 2021 was on this week.
You wouldn't want to get caught up by looking at the wrong book of news or anything like that, would you?
No, you'd only be an idiot to spend 10 minutes reading through the book of news before realizing it was the wrong one. That would be a really stupid thing to do. On that one. Interestingly, it was my first Ignite as an MVP, and so you get that kind of pre-Ignite view of it. And I was having a look through the book of news to see if that had come out, and it wasn't there. So I was like, okay, I'll carry on listening to this. And I thought, I wonder if I change March to November, whether that work. And it did. Which was fantastic, except it was permissioned. And what I found out is news.microsoft.com is actually powered by WordPress. Which I thought was really interesting. Yes, because basically, if you can get the page link before it's released, it asks you to log in to preview it. If you put in the wrong link, it doesn't make it obvious. But if you do that, you get to see it's WordPress. So that was quite an entertaining thing to find out. And I wasn't the only person on the call that tried that as well. So I found out when I put it in the chat. So interesting tidbit there, which surprised me slightly. It was also, as I say, my first one as MVP, my first one actually speaking at an Ignite. It wasn't quite speaking because I joined an AltSpace VR session. We were talking about Viva Connections and Yammer. People were able to drop in. Really interesting to have that experience in virtual reality. I thought it was fantastic to be able to have that chat. People are really engaging. It was a little bit tricky. I know I was talking with you, Al, and Garry beforehand. A little bit hard when people are kind of lurking in the back. You know, if you're in a real life situation, you can see if they're kind of hesitant and work out. Unfortunately, what you can't work out is if they're having technical difficulties and working out whether they're on mute or not, or really if they just don't want to speak to you. There is no way, because all you have is this blank avatar standing there doing nothing. Interesting experience, and we'll touch a little bit more on avatars and things like that in a minute. I'll put in the show notes the book of news is in there, massive amounts to go through. I don't know, Al and Garry, I know you haven't joined massive amounts of the sessions on there, but what was your overall thought on this Ignite? Has it been quite a positive one?
I think it has been a positive one. I think it's been very practical announcements, actually. There's really tangible things that are going to be useful for people. Rather than sort of thinking, this could be useful. But also, I think this Ignite, there has been an awful lot of news, an awful lot of announcements. You know, I think they threw out some number about the number of updates that they were actually announcing, but it feels like more than that. I think they said sort of, I can't remember what number they said, but it feels like there are some very, very long
81, I thought. Which to mind.
which it feels like a lot of the blog posts are really, really long. There's a lot of really, really good information out there. And, you know, I always measure the book of news by what proportion is set out for which area. And it seems quite even this time as well. You know, there's a lot for Azure, there's a lot for biz apps, there's a lot for modern work.
I felt there were some gaps. There were the things not announced about, you know, very little about Yammer, which I thought was a little bit of a shame. So I know there have been some updates, but not massive ones on there. I know Nigel Price, he was saying he didn't think there was that many Power Platform. Not entirely sure I agree. And there was one other area that wasn't touched on at all. I can't think to. But yeah, generally, I think the ones that were announced are fairly equal balance between them.
Yeah, and I think you know, there were a lot of announcements. There's a lot to explore, and I know when we were, you know, discussing this, you know, I've been going through the book of news. I haven't even got to getting my head around all of the security changes. Yeah, it's just kind of
it's fine. They're just renames. Everything's called Defender,
just
something or
just
other.
Renames. Now. Yeah, everything's Defender, Defender this, Defender that. Yeah, but yeah, and I think, you know, that makes quite a difference. You know, when I know actually there's a lot that I need to go and research and understand in more detail.
And what I've enjoyed from some of the sort of tweets and things, I say I've watched a few sessions, but not as many as I'd like to. There definitely seems to be some really interesting tidbits coming out from the sessions as well. And this has come from MVPs who've kind of seen some of that pre-stuff. They're still going, oh, interesting on there. So, no, some good stuff.
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about this I looked at the book of news and kind of thought it felt lighter than what the announcements actually were. And I think by looking at things, there's such a breadth of different announcements. You've got the big ones. You've got a whole mixture across the board. You've got the really big new things that are coming. They're really exciting. You've got the things that have been brewing for a while and now have actually landed. And then what I'm kind of really interested in, we've got lots of little feature enhancements as well around productivity as well. And it's a nice place to be, because I think we've kind of come to Ignite sometimes and it's like the big announcement and then not really much else sometimes, whereas this is
they're kind of rehashing old news and pretending it's new, and you're like
yeah, whereas I think, you know, there's lots of little productivity features that are now, you know, refining bits of Office. So they're not huge big changes, they're just slight different approaches to, you know, things like writing an email. Now you've got lots of new little features in there that'll pop up and be really helpful. Or
shall we stop pussyfooting around and jump into what I think we generally acknowledge was the big news, which is Microsoft Loop within there, and also connected with that, we'll talk a bit about ContextIQ. So who wants to describe Microsoft Loop?
It's because we always like a new product as opposed to a renamed product, don't we? So Loop was interesting. I had mixed views on Loop, I have to say. So I think Loop, some of it is renamed
for people who haven't seen it, are you able to kind of give an overview of what it is?
So it's for me, there's two components to it really. One is the fluid framework. So those where you've had emails from Yammer and Power Automate where you can interact in those emails, that's the fluid framework, where you might have a single source of truth and that information is being presented, you know, in an email, on a SharePoint page, in a Teams post, or you know, Teams chat.
And that live updates as well. So if someone else makes that Yammer change, you'll see it there as you're looking at it.
Yeah, and you know, and you can put it into, you know, OneNote or wherever it needs to go. And that's being able to embed components. Loop, when they talked about a Loop app, then starting to say, and there's a way to have workspaces and collections of Loop pages where you can easily embed the components into a set of pages. And as soon as I saw that, I sort of looked at it and thought, but that looks very similar to Teams in terms of some of its structure, but it's not. And I think there's a risk that this will confuse people a lot, to have a different interface to go to. But the idea of being able to embed information into products and to say, if I update it in my email or in the Loop app or in a Teams chat, and it goes back to its source of truth, so say a Dynamics record, and it updates, then that's brilliant. I think there's a real power to being able to surface that information contextually, so that your conversations are related to what you're seeing in front of you, which has always been an aspiration for all of this stuff, really.
I'm going to defend Microsoft a little bit. I think you're absolutely right. For those looking at the video, you can see the Loop app there. It does look like a new instance of Teams. I think the reason Microsoft have done it, if they've had the Fluid framework, it's been around for at least a year, 18 months, I think, if not more now. And people haven't really adopted and done that much with it. There's been little tweaks, but it hasn't quite gained that momentum that I think Microsoft thinks it should. And I think what they've done by creating an app is gone, boom, here is how you can do it. And if I like to look back in the past, if we look at Delve, that was a way of showing the power of the Microsoft Graph. I think that's what they've done here. Do I like it? No. Would I much rather they kind of built it in with other things and did the things there? Yes, I think this is exactly as you say, Al, going to confuse people. But I think there is the reasoning behind it. Put that app. Hopefully it'll be there for a bit. So people go, oh, it's got a nice fancy name. Rather than Fluid framework, I've got something consistent. I think we've seen with Viva the power of that brand to make lots of disparate things seem like one thing. Loop is doing that, putting an app around it makes that happen. And then you can see that in Pages. You can see that same experience. You can see those components showing on the screen there, like the voting tables that appear in Teams. And soon, I hope, that Loop app will disappear. But yeah, I'm not going to fight you too much on it being a bad idea.
Go for it, Gary.
I was just going to say, I mean, the kind of the real time nature of it, co-authoring, we've seen it before, we've got it in Office. We can do this type of thing in Office, but I guess it's bringing it into the conversations, right? So you can just quickly go, oh, hang on, we're discussing this with multiple chats. Maybe we can all jump into this one space and then get something sorted. It's trying to find the use cases. The separate app, I think maybe if I was looking at this and I hadn't got the understanding of what Teams can do potentially in SharePoint and the workspaces, and I'm fresh to Microsoft 365, I could see Loop actually looking really appealing. I think maybe we're looking at it
great.
Yeah, it looks absolutely great. I think it's where does it sit against the other things in the wheel, so to speak.
You want it to integrate and sit really comfortably with what we've been working so hard to get people adopting and using. And where Teams has really picked up, we know monthly active users. We want to be able to build on that, and I think that's where I'd love to see it as well. I can actually put it in as a tab and have a Loop page as a tab. So I've got that dynamic content,
which you can. Absolutely. So these pages are in there to be able to do that as well. But
that's for me that's the context that really makes it stand out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think if I'm thinking of scenarios where I potentially use this is when, I don't know, maybe I'll go into a Teams chat, I'll pull up an adaptive card from, like, say, Azure boards or something. I'll put that in so it gives the context to the person I'm speaking to. This is what we're going to talk about, and then it's disconnected from there, because then I have to go into that system, or we're having a discussion around it. Whereas it would be really nice to be able to get that real time picture and then put the comments in there, and then we're done. I think that would really speed things up. Whether that's DevOps or GitHub. That'd be perfect scenario for me. I think it will be, we've seen Dynamics integration in there, I think was shown. So that there is that ability to do that, to bring in these other systems. It'll be interesting to see what else is going to come as well.
We'll come back to that Dynamics comment in a bit, because I think that's one of the really interesting things. But before we go there, I just wanted to kind of take it on from Loop to ContextIQ. Which is, again, it's that same Fluid framework. It's that same capabilities of surfacing that same data in your different areas. But if you've used the Microsoft editor, it's given those kind of suggestions. So you're typing an email and it finishes off a sentence for you. I'm very lazy and I love things like that, because I think A, lazy, but B, it means it stops me waffling a little bit. It kind of gives me that shorter prompt view, because I can hit tab, it will fill that out, rather than I probably write a little bit more if I was typing it. So it gives you concise language. Stop laughing, the pair of you. It gives me concise language as well. what ContextIQ is taking that beyond, and instead of just putting in there, filling out your sentence, you can recommend documents. So in the demo we're showing on the screen, for those who can see that, it's our most recent strategic thinking is all in Mona's doc. And as you type that, it recommends, because it knows who Mona is, it knows a recent doc they're talking about, and you can sort of scroll down and look for other ones. But you can embed that doc within your email, within your Teams message, or other elements in there. I think this is going to be really, really powerful. And I think it's that bringing all those different parts of context, and Dynamics was one of the ones as an example as well. You can mention an organization or an opportunity, and you can put that into your email, into your chat messages. And it's all using that. And Microsoft was talking about everyday AI a few years back. It now feels that's reality. It is using that AI that just makes things simpler and easier within there. And I love it. I think this could be really big.
I think this is the sort of essential capability that's needed to make something like Loop useful, so that you can find that component that you've got, that element that is in another system, really easily, without having to go, I just need to go over to that other system, get a link to that, copy it over there, drop it in here. That will be the game changer. And I think if you've got components...
Just very quickly, if you're listening back to Ignite and you want to do some buzzword bingo, flow of work, it's definitely one of them that will get you hammered. But
so you completely you've broken
throwing your flow of
now.
work. Sorry.
Yeah, but yeah, I think making it intuitive and easy to actually embed this information. I mean, I love it the way if you're using Outlook online, you get the prompts for, well, these documents might be related to this meeting, and ContextIQ is really building on that to go, of everything that we know about you, this is the stuff that's going to be relevant based on the words that you're putting in. And if you're using those loop components as well, then, and it says, okay, and you've got this component that you created over in that OneNote over there, but do you want to drop it into this chat, this email, whatever you're putting together? I think that'll be the bigger game changer than having just the ability to put in dynamic content.
Absolutely. And talking of dynamics, and Garry sort of alluded to this a bit, what's really interesting about these components is Dynamics will have these loop components as well. So you can build those in. It's not just about email, not just about your Microsoft 365. It's the other side of the fence. Well, I probably shouldn't call it that, I'll get in trouble, but it's that kind of sister version of it, a sibling version of Dynamics, which personally, I felt recently Dynamics seems to have been doing a lot of things that Microsoft 365 is, and there seems to be a lot of battle about who's going to get there first. I think if I look at some of the contact center that was coming out and having analytics of voice and being able to turn tasks from calls you're having in contact center into Dynamics, that to me feels like the kind of things Teams at Microsoft 365 should have on there. What I love about this is this actually going to be the same experience across both. And I love it when Microsoft has that joined up thinking with this. And this is definitely one of the ones on there. So the loop components, the ContextIQ is all going to be there in Dynamics as well.
It is that concept of having a connected organization, where all of the data that you have permission to see is accessible to you wherever you are, and whether that's, in a Microsoft product or something like Jira, Salesforce, ideally it's whatever the business is running on, contextually, you can get that.
Just quickly, know if you're in Jira or Salesforce, you're not going to get loop components yet. No evidence that is coming, but just in case anyone has misheard that. But if you've got those Jira tickets, you will get those in Teams. And I'm guessing I think they said those loop components can have a third-party ones like Jira and Salesforce. So within a Microsoft product, you can mention a third-party one. Is that more what you were saying there, Al?
Yeah, I mean, when we think about the way that we communicate, collaborate around information, contextually, I want to see, details of that account, that engagement, that opportunity in that Teams conversation. And actually, it shouldn't matter whether it's in Dynamics or Salesforce. It's enhancing the ability for people to be productive. So, if we can do that with Loop, brilliant. I mean, I'm sure it will come sooner or later, probably later, but that's one of the ideas of the connected organization, isn't it? You can see that information, you can talk about it, you can collaborate, and you can make decisions on it and action it
where you are, again,
wherever you
flow of work. on that, the other bits of Dynamics linked with Loop and ContextIQ is that Microsoft Search is going to have Dynamics data in there. So if someone happened to be trying to build a connector so that Microsoft Search could ingest Dynamics one, they should stop wasting their time on that. Damn it! I really wish I hadn't invested too much time on it. Yeah, but the reason that I started working on that is because it made sense, and it's something that we were kind of thinking would be useful at CPS, because to be able to look for those opportunities, a number of times I have to jump back and forth between Dynamics. So really happy to see that as well. As our resident Dynamics expert, Al, I'll stop juggling too much of that. Anything else catch your eye in the Dynamics space?
I think there were some interesting announcements actually in the Dynamics space. There seemed to be a lot of content coming out that was related to different products. So whether that was new names for products, or whether that was
rename,
or whether that was combinations.
It's more for your buzzword bingo.
Yeah. I mean, combinations was one of the interesting things that I thought was there. So where, we had the supply chain management, supply chain insights, being able to bring some of the information together in different ways. I haven't got my head around all of the things that were announced, but there was certainly the concept that I want to be able to see information in different ways based on my role, have it all connected together, but to have it all in one place, which is essentially Dynamics. But there was also one thing that did catch my eye was connected space.
I hate you going to mention that, because that's what I thought you were going to say first time. So
yeah, and connected spaces looked like you can, if you've got a camera on a location in a retail store, a factory, even an office, you can actually then determine what you want to measure, whether it's the people flow, how do people actually move around, which I've been doing an awful lot of work with organizations around hybrid and how they get back into the office, and where that people traffic goes, and I think this is a really interesting concept of saying I can see where people are going, I can plan, whether it's promotions, whether it's where you have the most risk around health and safety, how you keep people socially distanced when you're at capacity. There's a lot of different ways that you could use this. So this was actually quite an interesting one that I really liked the look of, and need to look at this in more detail to see exactly how this is going to work.
And you touched on it when we were talking before, so I'm absolutely not claiming the glory for this one, but what is really interesting is this is coming in Dynamics. So this is a usable way. This isn't an Azure service that's being there that you could build on. This is a usable by people configuring it on there. It's got all that kind of things that you probably see in Azure, and I know in Future Decoded they've had some of these things of be able to video. I saw in the video we've just shown on the screen, there's a jumper that's been unfolded, and it shows that in red. I'm seeing a demo of some of these Azure skills of looking like where a gas canister had fallen over on there. But this is in Dynamics. This is where people are doing that field service, doing that thing. It's that usable system. I think it's a really interesting way of pushing that. Sorry, Garry.
No, I was just saying it's interesting because when I think of Dynamics, I don't necessarily think of things like this. It's an interesting use case, and there's more of these things. Like recently discovered Dynamics 365 guides, which is HoloLens, and again, you wouldn't necessarily put the two together, but I think Kev, like you're right. We're talking about things that you can go and configure and make use of. You can really kind of create some quite interesting solutions that are very new, to give you insights that you probably didn't think you'd be able to get, but make it really accessible.
And I think this is where some of those those new products I was talking about, Microsoft Customer Experience Platform, these are things that are building on some of the operational capabilities of Dynamics in these types of spaces to produce new products, to produce new insights, to give new value to the information, the IoT type stuff that we can actually start to see. Queue management, is absolutely crucial. If you don't want too many people queuing, where do you put them, and how do you manage your demand? It's a lot of these are there's some really powerful potential in how this works.
And with the world the way it is at the moment, anything that can help supply chains is absolutely really going to be quite helpful.
Which is why supply chain insights and supply chain management,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But even things like this, being able to sort of see where you're missing things on the shelf and stuff like that. I think it was interesting you talked about HoloLens there, Gary, because one thing someone say that's interesting with this is from that video you could see that areas on the floor are identified as kind of objects and anchors within there. It's just occurred to me that actually this is using a lot of the technology that's come from mesh as well. So funnily enough, when I was looking at that book of news from March, that was one of the things of the object anchors in there. But it's that link between that virtual reality world, understanding the 3D world. It's not all about the headsets and the pieces there. It is also going to be about these things of being able to monitor the 3D world, have an understanding of how that world, how people move through that. And then feed that into analytics, which can then be used as well. So it's that other side of mesh and the kind of I'm not going to use the M word that ends in verse at this stage, but it's that aspect of things and how it brings the physical world to that virtual one as well. Which brings us nicely onto the next announcement as well. We should stop sharing there. Now, I think in the last Ignite or this time last year where we had lots of campfires and things pinging around, I think that was last November, wasn't it? And lots of hallucinogenic stuff. They announced mesh, and we kind of went, well, this looks really
drugs
good.
Were
this looks nice.
It was just graphics.
Lots of bubbles, if I remember. Lots of bubbles.
A lot of the time on there. And I think we saw the interest of it, but nothing quite was there. I think in March there was a slightly terrifying video of a kind of half cartoon, half human avatar that really I liked the idea. Again, it just looked horrific. Now there is mesh for Microsoft Teams, and it's got avatars in there that you can make look like you, but you can run within your Teams meeting either in a 2D or in a 3D way. So you can have that 3D engagement with Teams, have those avatars so you can take place. If you've got headsets, you can imagine people being in the room together. I've seen a few people be a little bit cynical of, hang on, why, if I don't want to turn on my video, why would I want to have an avatar? Yeah, I quite like that idea. You often want to be, you want to see your emotions appear on screen, but you haven't done your hair. I realise that's not always a problem for me. It's not enough of it, but you don't want to be seen on screen as you are. I quite like that. Do I think it's a little gimmicky? Yeah, maybe. But I think really this is about the 3D world and the virtual world on there.
I think cameras on is great. I really notice it when people don't have their cameras on. I think the avatar is just the last thing I want to see is two letters representing you. A picture is better. An avatar is just one step up from a picture, and that's the way to look at it. It's not it's a little more interactive. You put a little more thought into it, but I think it's just a way to personalize things, which I think helps. And I know, yes, we all talk about video fatigue.
I do, but I also know some people don't like it and vehemently don't like it, and I'm open to that. I absolutely agree. I'd much rather be able to engage with people, be able to look at them, see their expressions on there. But that's why I kind of see this as a neat in between for it.
Yeah, but people can put pictures up there, and anybody who doesn't have a picture.
True. Sorry, go on, Gary.
No, I agree with Al. I think you want the video on there, but I think it's again when you have that mix of people as well. You've got some people camera on, some people camera off. I think it can be a bit disconnected, and at least if you have something that comes back and just feels a bit more lifelike, although it isn't the actual real person, then I do think that it is it's the step up from the picture.
So interesting on the photo here, you've got a link of kind of some people with avatars, some people with pictures, and some people with live videos. Any thoughts on that, Garry?
Oh, I'd prefer that. Well, actually, no, I prefer where everyone's in the middle, not so much the people on the right who have obviously not got the camera on.
True.
But
I think the key here is equality. The same experience for everybody, so if everybody's got an avatar, great. It just means that there's more equality. It makes it a more equal experience for all participating. Whether we get avatars that are slightly less humanistic, slightly more idealistic, I don't know,
like people turning up as a potato.
Or an octopus, or we may be going back to.
Do you remember that Power Platform session, Gary, where someone did spend the whole time? I can't remember who it was now. He spent the whole meeting as a talking potato. It was really off-putting trying to talk to someone and give a presentation where they were a talking potato. But
those snap camera days, when we first went into lockdown, I think it adds to the equality when everybody is using the same thing. And I think the avatars are definitely a step up from a photo, and a photo is definitely a step up from 2 letters.
Yeah, no, I agree on that. I think if it was just the 2D avatars coming in there, I kind of go, I don't really see the magic of this. I can see people using it, but to me, it's about that 3D world. That's that Engage I mentioned was on the All Space VR. It was great to be able to interact and walk around a bit as well.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing, isn't it? We're exploring hybrid and how people return to work, but actually, this is a whole new paradigm of how we engage and how we work. That doesn't matter whether you're in the office or not, or wherever you are. This is going to be completely different. So I think we said, when we saw Mesh, this is very forward thinking. It's now Mesh for Teams. There's already a whole bunch of stuff out there for, the M word, the metaverses of various different companies, but there's also partners that are building stuff for all sorts of different devices to allow that to happen. And I think, it will happen. There will be use cases that are really effective, and there will be a demand, and that demand will grow as the technology gets better and it becomes more accepted, and the technology, the headsets become cheaper.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see how much of this is. I mean, obviously the example that they gave was Accenture, right? That's enterprise, but there is a team's personal element here as well that could be playing into this. I think that you can see people. It looks a bit more fun.
Please don't talk about team's personal. Sorry,
Kev is wincing, but it's people try it, and if you've got something that people want to try, then at least they're coming to the platform.
The virtual reality, mixed reality, I love. It's the team's personal that makes me wince.
Let's just talk about Skype instead, shall we?
Absolutely. I'd be happy with keeping Skype, but we'll talk about some legacy things that stick around at the end of the show. Moving on a little bit with Teams, another one, not really an announcement, and I didn't really see anything new apart from, it's not quite ready yet, but I am still genuinely excited about this, so looking forward to it. And that's the Microsoft Teams Connect. That ability to have shared channels. You can see within here, you can share a channel. And what that means is you can have your teams without having to, I'm trying not to swear here because I'm going to keep it so kids can listen because they love this kind of thing. But that you can have that without having to keep switching tenants and see that pane on there, or without having to keep having multiple browsers with your different tenants open. This will be fantastic on there as well.
I mean, I think that's certainly one element. I think there's also the element of, it's the Avengers Assemble scenario. We need to pull people together to engage.
Get mad. Oh, I see.
Yeah. But to get people together temporarily into a location that is more permanent, has more auditability, more records than just a chat would have. And I think
surely just a group chat works for that. I know they're great, aren't they?
They can be. It depends what the context is, doesn't it? But when you then want to bring in external people, and that's where it really, really changes. But I think the thing that's caught my eye on what they're showing now is, rather than adding individuals as you do in a private channel, you can add multiple teams, up to 50 teams, and share your channel with those teams. I'm intrigued to see exactly how that will look in the interface when you have things shared with you. But it's
where you'll see what's shared and what's not.
Yeah, and what's in your tenant and what's external. But I think there's a lot of power to this, and it adds a level of flexibility that I know a lot of organisations have wanted and needed.
Yeah, quite. I'm slightly. I hadn't kind of tweaked on this one. Share channel with people, which sounds great. Share channel with a team, fantastic. Share channel with a team you own. Why do you need team and team you own? What's the difference between the two? Has got me slightly intrigued. I know the difference between them, but why you'd need two different options
with a team? I guess you might need to get permission from the owner.
I guess it would pops in through a different one.
I don't know.
Intrigued by that. I mentioned this was due at the last Ignite. They said they will be available by the end of the year. They are now talking about it being available in public preview in the first quarter of 2022. So it's obviously not quite as easy as they'd hoped, and see things slip a little bit on that, which is a shame.
I'm not sure. This is one of the other announcements about the co-authoring on encrypted documents as well. I don't know if that's played a part in this. I think there's been discussions around that when this was demoed, I think. So it may have been an indication.
Because that's GA now as well.
Yeah, it's only just, I think.
I think that potentially there's also, we're going back to Loop, what are the permissions? If I share an entity from Dynamics in a Teams channel, what are the implications of that? I think that'll be another interesting conversation to have, to see exactly how that works with the compliance side and governance side of things.
No, that's interesting. I hadn't made that link before. That's an interesting one. I do notice the link on here. They're extending Teams chat capabilities, enabling you to chat with team members outside your organization. Yay! With a Teams personal account. Oh, for goodness sake, that's going to make things really complicated, isn't it? But I'm going to move on from Teams personal accounts. There were a few other announcements around Teams that I thought were pretty interesting. I think they are just below this. Some of the webinar and broadcast capabilities. I know particularly the virtual green room, I think it's a fantastic one. Often when you're doing conferences, knowing when you can start, when you can join, can be a little bit awkward. I think that's going to be a really useful idea. So people, I can imagine even having big town halls, you want to kind of line people up, make sure they're ready, do a quick check of how everything looks, and then bring them into the meeting. That ability to do that, that ability for people, if you're doing a co-presentation, to have a quick chat beforehand, not having to jump between different meetings to do that. I think that's a really nice piece of functionality.
Actually, the one that caught my eye there was the co-organizer. Running a user group.
Yeah.
You have, three. You want three co-organizers, really, all of whom can start it, regardless of whether they're in the tenant as a primary member or not. So hopefully that will be something that will come as part of this co-organizer capability, because otherwise
I think that's intention, isn't it?
Because otherwise you end up with so I'm not going to be available for the next user group, so therefore the meeting has to be created from somebody else's tenants, so it's quite, there's potentially some really, really useful stuff there to make that more easy to manage.
I know this also, this is on my list. In fact, it came up when I was talking with a client today about the Q&A app, which I was a little confused when it talks about live events, because you've kind of got that Q&A within live events already. But I understand there's a dedicated app now. From the little I saw and heard was that it's now powered by Yammer. So it uses Yammer. Now, I haven't seen more than that, and I may be getting things wrong with that, but that was intriguing. Definitely want to dig a bit more and find out about that.
It would make sense.
Faces, neither of you have seen the same as well.
But it, like you say, it would make sense because Yammer is becoming that Q&A kind of area.
Source of knowledge.
Yes, source of knowledge. Indeed.
So really powering the topics as well. So being able to have those questions and therefore powering Viva topics, which we'll come on to in a minute as well, was really interesting. There's a few chat enhancements. I think, Al, you saw. My favorite one of those was chat with self. Now you can have a conversation with yourself. They did explain why. I was too busy laughing at the idea of saying, hello, how are you? I'm fine today. How are you doing?
I think it's for doing demos, isn't it?
Probably is, yes. Oh, talking of demos, one of the things about Loop, how on earth are we going to demo that without having 3 or 4 people doing things at the same time? That's going to be the challenge. I want to see some guidance on how to do demos of Loop. That will be the interesting one.
Well,
thinking, damn.
Oh, I think that's part and parcel of a lot of this stuff, though. The collaboration is multiple devices that you can. Yeah, you have to have that ability, don't you?
Yeah. So it's doubling the number of people
except for the chat with self. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Let me demo chat with self again. Why are you doing it? Well, there's no one else here. So. Are you just talking to yourself? Yes, I am. I'm getting very Eddie Izzard. Eddie Izzard would love that. Do you know that's who they need to advertise this? Get Eddie Izzard in doing a chat with himself. There we go. Microsoft, there's your advert. You can save your money on your big agencies. Bring in Eddie. Job done.
We're still getting to the reason why.
It was mentioned somewhere. I just for the life of me can't remember what it was. But we'll try and dig that out and mention it on there.
The chat with myself is usually I forward a chat via email to myself so I can put it in as a task.
That's right.
That's a note to self, isn't it? Not chat to self. Yeah.
Kind of.
No, I think it was that. It was those things that you send it to yourself to remind yourself to look at later. I think that was the example they gave.
Does it automatically create a task in to do then?
Which would be even nicer, but yeah.
Be nice.
We'll dig into that a bit more purely because I'm intrigued because it sounds bonkers. But we've had this conversation before. Microsoft rarely does things for the sake of it. They do because there's some demands for it. I think we've seen from the user voice and what's coming up with that. They very much look at that demand, and you have to get enough on there unless you're big and important enough to just make it happen. But yeah, intriguing. And with that, I know, Al, you're looking forward to testing out all 800 reactions that are coming through as well.
I don't know whether I have 800 reactions in my vocabulary for facial expressions, let alone to actually choose to actually contribute to a Teams conversation. So yes, this is the reactions in terms of, the option that you get to, thumbs up, clap, heart, smile, look surprised. You'll now have a lot more options there. And yeah, I think that'll be quite interesting to see exactly how many reactions will be there. You'll definitely want to get some analytics in place, I think, to measure them, to get your BI up about what the sentiment of the actual what the meeting is actually like, especially if it's one of those.
That middle finger emoji is starting to get more popular. Maybe you need to look at employee experience. There we go. Do you know, that's not a bad idea.
There you go. We're pulling it all together now. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's 5 reactions may not be enough. 800 may be too many.
I mean, obviously we can shrink those a bit because there's a lot with absolutely rightly different skin tones and elements of there. So there's probably 100 reactions, which, to be honest, still sounds like quite a lot. There was another small one, again, a small update, but I thought a big impact, which is the delayed delivery. I'm a massive fan of that of email. I often want to send someone a message because I've thought of it out of hours, but I don't want to disrupt their day. To be able to do that in Teams as well, I think would be really nice. I know, Al, we were being cynical as to whether it will understand what working hours are with that, but hopefully I'm going to be optimistic around that one.
I think that, ideally, that working hours. So for those who aren't aware, if you're using the desktop Outlook app, that you can actually set it to delay to send in other people's working hours.
For internal within the same organization, isn't it?
And I think that's that should be the default. But that doesn't work for the online version yet. So hopefully it will get rolled out, and the delay for Teams will be delay for a specific time or delay for their working hours. Just 2 options with the default set to their working hours. That'll be great.
Absolutely. And the other one I see, Al, you've put in there the new search results UI.
I just did that because I know how much you love search.
I do love search, and I'm deeply disappointed by this because I've been looking forward to an improved search within Teams. In fact, my Comsverse session was pretty much based on it, so I had to rewrite that fairly late on because it still didn't get released. It is coming now. And as far as I can tell, it's just a revamped view of the same content. So it's not bringing in any additional content. You're not going to be able to bring the third-party things that you can do with Microsoft Search, your answers that are going to go in there, desk locators. None of that is coming on there. Hopefully, it's still going to come down the line. But yeah, I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit disappointed at that one. So I'm going to move on quickly because I don't like being grumpy for too long. On there. A nice one as well, moving on slightly to Power Apps, you can now have Teams chat within Power Apps. You can embed a Teams, I haven't seen the full details on this, I assume it's you can put a specific team within there or allow chat with an individual, but I think that really opens up some of the capabilities to build into your app of having chat type real-time conversations, which I think really
it goes back to that context, doesn't it? Having the conversations contextually in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, which really nice view from that one as well. Sorry to interrupt your listening to this, but we're going to take a little bit of a break here, split out this episode into two parts. So in part one, we covered a lot of that Microsoft 365 news, some great Power Platform news, plenty of things about Teams. We're going to come back in part two and cover some of the news, the other news about Power Apps, a little bit of Viva within there, talking about how you can have effective meetings, a little bit of Dev World. We've got to keep Garry happy as well, and then cover some interesting updates that we didn't expect to come as well.